Are you even making real decisions? Or are you just reacting to life? What if I told you most people don't even know they're making terrible decisions? What if I told you that the reason your life isn't where you want it to be is because your judgment is weak? I've watched people destroy their own lives simply because they refuse to see reality. You may think you're making smart choices, but your blind spots are costing you everything. Your disregard for reality makes you a terrible decision maker. The next time you make a decision, acknowledge constraints. Think about the consequences. Constraints prevent innovative ideas from ever developing. If you want to excel at decision making, always challenge constraints. It is okay to have a constrained vision as opposed to an unconstrained vision, but that is a talk for another day. We live in a world of scarce resources. Nothing here is infinite. Once you acknowledge that simple fact, your decisions will improve. And to fully internalize that fact, acknowledge geography. So, studying geography alone will not only make you a better decision maker, but it will shape you into a more aware human being. It will shape you into someone who understands the world from a fundamental perspective. What does what does geography have to do with decision making? So a few weeks ago, I was studying geography, and the instructor he said geography in its purest form is why. Geography explains why. So the more you understand that simple but profound word why, the more clarity you will gain in decision making and understanding the world itself. So here are a few points that showcase geography's brilliant effect on decision making. Business and economics. Companies analyze geography to determine optimal locations, considering customer distribution, transportation, and competition. Smart businesses position themselves strategically to maximize profitability. Urban planning and environmental management. Governments and city planners rely on geographic analysis to develop infrastructure, allocate resources, and balance development with sustainability. National security and defense. Geography shapes military strategy. National security and defense. Geography shapes military strategy. Understanding terrain, borders, and spatial relationships is critical for national defense and intelligence. Education and awareness. Geography enhances geoliteracy and helping individuals comprehend spatial relationships and global interdependencies. Without it, people make poor, narrow minded decisions. Disaster response and public health. Geographic analysis helps governments respond to natural disasters and track disease outbreaks. Without it, decisions are slow, ineffective, and even deadly. At its core, geography provides the spatial framework for every major decision. The greatest minds leverage geography to understand reality accurately. Real quick, just to bring more emphasis on decision making and geography, the relation between them. This is some notes that I gathered up from the courses and the research books that I've been studying with geography. So, decision making and geographical paradigms. A response to the positive revolution of the 1960s and 1970s. Knowledge is gained through experience, but that this experience must be firmly established as verifiable evidence. The acceptance of fact is based on agreed experience. If there is no agreed experience, because people's views are partial or their standpoints vary, then how can teachers present different views? The search is therefore is not for fact, but for ways in which students interpret the world, making sense. Margaret Roberts said that in 2013. Decision making is therefore part of an overall philosophy of the subject and of education about developing informed opinion, not just a separate examination in a particular specification. Demonstrate knowledge of locations, places, processes, environments, and different scales. Demonstrate geographical understanding of concepts and how they are used in relation to places, environments, and processes. The interrelationships between places, environments, and processes. Apply knowledge and understanding to interpret, analyze, and evaluate geographical information and issues, and to make judgments. Select, adapt, and use a variety of skills and techniques to investigate questions and issues and communicate findings. Here's some more research that I gathered up with just to find the connection between decision making and geography. Decision making as part of the new A-level assessment objectives. So below are assessment objectives for this specification. Learners must demonstrate their ability to demonstrate knowledge and understanding of places, environments, concepts, processes, interactions, and change at a variety of scales. Apply knowledge and understanding in different contexts to analyze, interpret, and evaluate key geographical information and issues. Use a variety of relevant quantitative, qualitative, and fieldwork skills to investigate geographical questions and issues, interpret, analyze, and evaluate data and resource evidence, construct arguments, and draw conclusions. So that's just a little bit of information that I just gathered up just to present to you not only the framework, but the connection of how the world around you and the world you live in and your experiences, your environment, how that also determines your decision making. Judgment is everything. Sharpening your judgment will make you a better decision maker. Your inability to understand judgment makes you a terrible decision maker. Whatever the reason is, maybe you have a negative perception of judgment, maybe you don't understand it, but disregarding judgment makes your judgment terrible, which in turn makes you a terrible decision maker. Warren Buffett is one of the wealthiest men in the world because of his judgment. If Warren Buffett were to lose all of his money today, companies would still pay him billions of dollars because of his proven track record of great judgment. Everything you do right now builds your ability to judge. Your experiences, your thinking, your consumption, your learning, your work, it all builds up to how you judge. We all judge, but not everyone is aware of it. And unconscious judgment is weak judgment. The science of common sense. Common sense isn't just instinct, it's the ability to measure trade-offs. Every single time you make a decision, ask yourself, is this more costly or more beneficial? That's it. That's the science. But here's the issue. Most people never develop this skill. They make decisions without analyzing cost versus benefit. They choose comfort over consequence. They act impulsively, then blame the world for their outcomes. If you lack the ability to measure cost-benefit analysis in your decisions, you lack common sense. If you consistently make costly decisions, your judgment is corrupt. And if you never even acknowledge this skill, you will never have control over your own life, over your own future. Period. Everything comes with a cost. Everything. But not everything comes with a benefit. Learn to see the difference. The corruption of social decision making. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. That was said by the one and only Friedrich Nietzsche. They call me a psychologist. This is not true. Dostoevsky wrote, I am merely a realist in the higher sense. Making something social destroys the truth of it. Why? Because social groups need consensus to survive. And consensus is about compromise, not truth-seeking. This is why I hate sociology. Natural science once allowed independent thinkers to seek truth. Individuals could verify reality through inventions and empirical proof. But social sciences infected academia like a disease. Social sciences like macroeconomics are completely corrupted. Social sciences need funding, which means they are politically motivated. They themselves influence society and policy, making them even more corrupted. Even natural sciences are under attack by the social sciences. The truth of science is being socialized. The more people involved in the process, the further from the truth the results become. Science itself is overrated. This dehumanization isn't just an academic problem, it's an historical one. As Dostoevsky wrote, all my life I have been offended by the laws of nature. The rejection of human individuality in favor of rigid, systemic thinking has led to some of history's greatest intellectual failures. So, before I even go any further, I want to go back to the quote I said by Dostoevsky earlier, when he said that I am not a scientist, I'm not a psychologist. You think of me as somebody who is a realist to his highest sense. What does he mean by that? Pretty much everything what I just mentioned. I've always, and this is my, like I said, and this has always been my this is my opinion, but just from the stuff that I've said, I have evidence and research to back up what I'm saying. But I've always thought that just science alone was overrated, and I think a lot of people, they look towards scientists, especially nowadays in the media, etc., etc., etc. They look towards scientists and they say, oh, science backs it up. That doesn't really mean anything. The science could be very biased. And I've just explained to you, I just proven to you the difference between the natural sciences, the social sciences, and Dostoevsky all the way back in, like, these are ancient times, that Dostoevsky, he even said back in his day, he even recognized the fallacies and the I guess you could say also the politically motivated, driven sciences back in his day. He felt offended by people saying that he was a psychologist or he was a scientist. He's like, no, I'm a realist to his highest sense. So with the fact that he even said that, even in those times, in the 1800s, not ancient times, but 1800s, he even acknowledged and recognized, not acknowledged, but recognized how much BS it is. And that this is something that I've always thought, but I've never really, until now, until now, that I really did really deep research on how like misleading the study of science is. So just because you read a science book, or just because you took a science course, or you heard a scientist say X, Y, and Z, it doesn't mean that it has any kind of volume, weight, or quality, any worth behind it. You have to really dig deep. You have to be a radical to its truest sense. And that's what Dostoevsky is. That's what he said. He said, I am, you think of me as somebody who is a realist to his highest sense. That's a radical. I'm a radical. I call myself a radical. Not a radical in a political sense, somebody who's an extremist. A radical to his purest sense. A radical is a definition of somebody who digs deep, who goes to the root of things, who goes all the way to the base, to the foundation, frameworks, fundamental of everything. So that's something just to look into. That's something to acknowledge. Take in consideration. This whole video is about decision making, and my whole foundation is about truth and facts and truth, facts and presenting the truth. So look through history. Who truly created groundbreaking innovations? Not scientists. It was the natural philosophers. These were radical independent thinkers, and they were persecuted for challenging society. Think about what a PhD actually means. A PhD means you are a philosopher in that field. You have the knowledge, skills, and intellect to extend the discipline you mastered. So it's the same in martial arts. You guys know I think I mentioned that I study martial arts, and I didn't go specific on what martial arts I study, but Taekwondo, Krav Maga, karate, judo, a lot of different things, boxing, a lot of different things, still do. And I remember my master, he said that when you become a black belt, you won't just memorize moves. It's not just about memorizing things, It's about you. He also said you will understand the moves so deeply that you can apply them instinctively in a real fight. So what he's basically saying is that you're going to learn how to apply. And he really stressed that a lot on me. He was like, learn how to apply. Learn how to apply these moves. And I have another master. He's a 4th degree black belt. Been studying ever since he's been 6 years old, kickboxing and everything else. Since he's been 6 years old. And he even told me, he said that when me and him would spar, he would say, if I hit you, or if you made a false move, or anything, you made a mistake while we're sparring, step back, and think about what you just did. Think about the decisions that you just did. And so it's really building instincts, and you want to be instinctive. You want to be so instinctive that when you start making good judgment, you start making better decisions. You start making better decisions, you start making better judgment. And so that's the thing. And so I'm just kind of tying that in with that, how everything can go into play with just decision making and judgment. So it's you learn as much as you can before coming to conclusions, and then when you come to those conclusions, and because you learn as much as you can, you make better decisions. You're making a better judgment. Like I said, Warren Buffett gets paid billions of dollars for his judgment, literally, purely for his judgment. He can lose all of that today, and then companies will go back and pay him billions because he makes good judgment. That is wisdom. I think good judgment and wisdom ties in together. Not I think, I know. They tie in together. They're very, very close related. So the more you seek wisdom, the more you practice good judgment, and the more you instill the value in you and the knowledge in you, the intelligence in you to understand how to have good judgment, the more wealthier you are going to become, because the more not only calculated, but the better decisions you're going to start making. Economics is a study of scarcity, and to broaden that up a little bit, or to go a little deeper into that, and it's not only it's a study of scarcity, but it's a study of how human beings make decisions based on scarce resources in the finite world that we live in. So think about that. Economics teaches you, and it's also the study of wealth. All that stuff right there, what I just said, that is going to determine who's going to be wealthy and who's not. So just think about these things that I'm saying. Perhaps you can, I never tell people to take notes, but perhaps you could take notes on this, rewind this video, slow the video down, repeat, but I'm always going to pretty much, not always, but this is not going to be the last time I'm going to say this. I'm going to probably say this in another video that's related to this, in my writings, everything. I have a newsletter that I wrote, so I'm actually right now, as we speak, building a website, right? So I can have just a home base of where I put all my work in, so you won't have to go searching for it. Right now I just put my stuff on X and LinkedIn, but eventually I will have a website that's going to be a lot more easier for you to go to, and for you to just read all my stuff, watch all my videos, and buy my products when I eventually have products, if you want to buy products as well. Okay, but let's move on with the video. This is, like I said, this is the same with decision making. You are not just learning facts, you are training your instincts. So think about that. The separation of economics from social science. So this is going back to social science. In economics, I want to actually talk a little bit more about this, between the relation, not even a relation, the distinction between economics and social science. I don't think at all that economics is a science at all. So, but I will allow macroeconomics to remain categorized as a social science. However, microeconomics is not a social science at all. I think it goes a little bit in relation to what Dostoevsky was saying when he felt so offended when people were calling him a psychologist, a scientist. He's like, I'm not. I am a person. I am a realist to its highest sense. Microeconomics is a study of realism to its highest sense. You can't get any more real than studying scarcity, than being the study of scarcity. Macroeconomics is not the study of scarcity. Macroeconomics is BS. I would not recommend people to study macroeconomics. At least not if you want to study it. At least please don't start there, because your whole mindset, your whole judgment is going to be corrupt. Study microeconomics. Microeconomics is going to give you a very, very solid foundation. Macro is not even foundational. It was just built off John Maynard Keynes, who was actually a brilliant mathematician, but he wasn't a brilliant economist. Macroeconomics is all Keynesian economics, and it doesn't even go that far back. Adam Smith is a father of microeconomics. So, but we don't want to go too deep into that, but I'm just giving you a little backstory. So sciences, especially social sciences, cannot interfere with economics at its core. Microeconomics is based on individual choices, incentives, and trade-offs, not political influence or social narratives. Any attempt to socialize microeconomics corrupts its foundations. This is where macro comes into play. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, has become a playground for ideological manipulation. It seeks to justify policies, regulate behavior, and distort economic reality. The distinction is critical. Microeconomics reveals truth. Macroeconomics disguises it. Macroeconomics does nothing but benefit the people on the macro scale, bureaucrats, the government. That's why, this trickle-down economics, this crony capitalism, it's all phony. You're not going to be macroeconomics is fooling everyone, thinking that you can redistribute and trickle down wealth. It's not going to happen. It never will happen. You guys are going to keep fighting that same fight for 500 years from now because it's never going to happen. It's impossible. You can't redistribute wealth. You can only create it. You can only build it. And until everybody understands that, you're not going to do it. So that's why I study macroeconomics, but I know how foolish it is. But I study it for me just to understand it. This is no difference than me studying communism, socialism, Karl Marx, and everything. Because I study it not because I want to practice it. I study it because I want to know it. I want to understand it. I want to know my opposition. So it's no difference than somebody going to a war, a samurai going to a war. Which I love the samurais, by the way. I'll do a video on the samurais. And I try to instill the culture of a samurai. But anyway, it's like a samurai going to war, or whoever going to war, a soldier going to war, and they're understanding, learning, respecting their enemy. They don't have to be them. They don't have to change their convictions off of them. But that's the whole point. You're understanding your opposition. It's very important to understand your opposition. So we'll move on. Free to choose. Free to be wrong. The burden of consequences. So people think that freedom, it eliminates the burden of choice. And it doesn't. Okay? That's what freedom does. That's what freedom is. Freedom comes with a cost. So freedom does come with a burden. Okay? To go wrong in one's own way is better than to go right in someone else's. Fyodor Dostoevsky. This was one of Dostoevsky's most profound insights. Dostoevsky understood the agony of decision making. His work is filled with characters who battle with freedom, morality, and consequences. Why? Because most people don't make decisions, they inherit them. Society, culture, family, media, all force decisions upon you before you ever think for yourself. Your life is already thought out and planned for you. You are just an actor playing the script. If you wanted to change that, then do everything I'm telling you to do that in the beginning of this video leading up to now. Fyodor Dostoevsky, known for exploring the complexities of human nature, often emphasized the importance of individual decision-making and self-will, even when it deviates from societal norms or reason. I'm going to be talking about Fyodor Dostoevsky a lot on this channel, just like I talk about a lot of people, but he really heavily influenced me on how I'm living right now. And a lot of the things that I'm learning and studying, I really can relate to his work. Him along with Nietzsche, Carl Jung, Evola, the people. I had a little short that I mentioned this. I said this in one of my other videos too. But I'm just telling you some of the people that I really acknowledge. So, a quick backstory of Dostoevsky, which is much needed. He was in prison and was sentenced to death. Fyodor Dostoevsky was sentenced to death in 1849 for allegedly participating in the Protchevsky Circle, a radical intellectual group suspected of subversive activities and criticism of the... He was in prison and was sentenced to death. Fyodor Dostoevsky was sentenced to death in 1849 for allegedly participating in the Protchevsky Circle, a radical intellectual group suspected of subversive activities and criticism of the Tsarist government. Although the sentence was ultimately commuted, ideas include... So, in other words, These group of people will gather up and discuss radical ideas, including those critical of the Tsarist regime in the Orthodox Church. So, however, at the last minute, the Tsar commuted the sentence to a term of hard labor in Siberia, followed by military service. So I have a similar story where I thought I was going to die, where I thought, I faced death. And it was some years ago, like maybe back in 2011. I was going to the University of Alabama. This was when I was trying to walk on at the football team, try to play football for University of Alabama. And in 2011, I think it was April 2011, a huge tornado came. It destroyed all of Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa is the city where the university is located. And but prior to the tornado hitting, long story short, it was a nice sunny day. My dad was calling me throughout the day because he was telling me that there was a huge storm coming. And when I was living in Alabama, those are people who doesn't really understand know Alabama. Obviously it's the South, but it's also in Tornado Alley. And so from all the years I was living out there, I always will hear the tornado sirens all the time. And so I just kind of ignored the warnings until I actually saw the tornado coming right towards me, right from my very eyes. So I was at my it happened. I was at my apartment complex when the tornado came, and my roommate at the time, my roommate said that my roommate, he was actually making a bigger deal as well, and so that's when I started taking it serious. And so we go downstairs, we go to the lobby, not the lobby, but the what is it called, the clubhouse, and everybody was there. So I seen like this group of people, like all the residents, they were just grouped and at the clubhouse and just talking about the tornado coming. And this was prior to the tornado. It was still daylight, so there was no storm clouds. It wasn't raining. It was nothing. It was nice day outside. The temperature was like 70 degrees or whatever. And so, long story short, I started talking to this guy. He started acting like, he seemed like he was an expert in this stuff. And so he just started talking to me about, the tornadoes, and that it's very serious and it's definitely on its way over here. And then so we were inside the clubhouse at first, and then so a few of us started going outside, and the manager of the apartment complex, I guess the landlord, started shaking. She was really scared. She was like, "You guys, I need you guys to take cover, go into the movie theater and take cover," because the movie theater was the lowest. I guess it had the lowest platform in the entire clubhouse, and it was the most safest place for us to be at. So she just recommended us all to go there. And so while I was outside, though, the guy who was talking to me about the storm, he pointed towards the hills, towards the mountains, like this far, far away. And he was just saying, "You see that big dark cloud right there?" And he says, "That's a tornado." And it was like a lightning striking one spot, this huge dark cloud. It was like I was in a movie. And the lightning was just striking in one spot really, really fast. And then before I knew it, like it was just approaching really, really fast. And I felt the wind starting to pick up. And then I heard the gusts picking up and swirling really, really fast. And so it was still some miles away, but as it was getting closer, you felt the impact of the tornado. Like, this is how powerful the tornado was. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, like, you can even look this up. You can YouTube this. Tuscaloosa, 2011, I think 11 or 12. I think it was 11. 2011 tornado. 2011 tornado in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. If you don't know how to spell Tuscaloosa, I think it's Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa. And so me and my friend, so we went inside the clubhouse, and I just took over. I started prayer. I thought I was gonna die. I knew I was gonna die. I was like, this is it, because the tornado was coming really fast, and it was like in alignment with the clubhouse. And I just said my prayers. I said, okay, this is it. I said, Lord, this is it. I'm going to die. Forgive me for all of my sins. Sorry for everything that I've done. Open them gates for me. It's so, but surprisingly, thank God that the tornado actually skipped my building. it skipped the clubhouse and it destroyed the entire city. The entire street next to us, and it destroyed half of the town. You can look it up, watch it on YouTube, Google it, whatever. You'll see what I'm talking about. Probably the biggest tornado that ever hit Alabama, probably, or and definitely one of the biggest that hit the South. Very, very serious tornado. But when you actually are about to experience death, you really start to look at life differently. You get a different perspective on life. So this is what Dostoevsky was talking about in his books, in his many of his writings. The psychological terror that he faced when he thought he was going to die. Him and his, I don't want to call them his friends, but the radical group that he was a part of, when they have like these radical movements, and they were discussing these books that were banned from in Russia. And at that time, they were challenging the status quo and challenging the government, and the government did not like that. And long story short, to keep it simple, they sentenced them to death, and it was commuted at the very, very last moment of their life. They put the right rags over there, not rags, but white, I guess you can say, sheets over their heads, or white cloths over their heads, and they were faced right in front of the firing squad. There was one member of the group, he refused to do it out of rebellion. But when they had the rifles pointed towards them, and then right before the light, there was two signals that went. First was the signal for them to fire the shots, the rifles, at Dostoevsky and his other members. The second, right at the last moment, guy starts coming, and another guard comes, and he waves a flag, and he says, "It has been commuted. We are going to just put them to hard labor." So like right after that moment, all three of the members, they pretty much they were victims of the psychological torture tatting of this mock execution. The mock execution is, I guess, it's an experience of being sentenced to death and then having the sentence commuted at the very last minute, this is often referred to as a mock execution, which is a psychological torture tatting. So it worked. It worked in a way, because it really did screw with Dostoevsky psychologically. But I guess up to this moment, though, this is when Dostoevsky started really writing his best work, and he became, I guess, a bit more humble, I guess, in a way. I don't want to use that word humble, but he just started looking at things differently. He had a different perspective, but he also, like I said earlier, he saw that how the ridiculousness of the totalitarian movement of the government was, and socialism was, and everything, and he started challenging it even more in his writings. He channeled his suffering into some of the most profound works of literature ever written. In some of his works, if you are into deep philosophy, you know the story, some of these books, but Crime and Punishment, The Brothers Karamazov, Demons, The Idiot, just to name a few. But his best works are probably The Brothers Karamazov. This is widely considered his masterpiece, followed by Crime and Punishment and Notes from Underground. So I just kind of explained all that to you just to go deeper into his works in life, and to further validate my point on decision making and the ridiculousness of totalitarianism in socialized decision making for the individual. The mock execution in the years in the Siberian prison was thinly fictionalized in his novel Notes from the House of the Dead in 1860. This experience changed Dostoevsky forever. His naive, hopeful romanticism disappeared. His religious faith deepened, and the sadism of both prisoners and guards taught him that the sunny view of human nature presumed by utilitarianism, liberalism, and socialism is preposterous. Real human beings differed fundamentally from what these philosophies presumed. Man shall not live by bread alone. Obviously, Jesus Christ said that. Matthew 4:4, which is quoting Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. To go a little deeper into this, Jesus emphasized that true life comes from God's word and guidance, not just material needs. Today, the phrase is often used to mean that people need more than just material possessions or basic needs to live a meaningful life. In Fyodor Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov, the Grand Inquisitor uses Jesus' statement, "Man shall not live by bread alone," to argue that humanity needs more than just material needs met. They require spiritual freedom and meaning, which the church, in its pure pursuit of order, has allegedly failed. The whole point of prison, as Dostoevsky experienced it, is to restrict people's ability to make their own choices. But choice is what makes us human. Those prisoners lash out because of their ineradicable craving to have a will of their own. And that craving is ultimately more important than their own well-being and, indeed, than life itself. The true test of decision-making is this. Are you making choices based on your own experience, logic, and truth, or are you just following social expectations? If you let the crowd think for you, your decisions will be distorted, weak, and built on artificial constraints. Dostoevsky also warns against the burden of freedom. Nothing is more seductive for man than his freedom of conscience, but nothing is a greater cause of suffering. Freedom sounds great until you realize it means you alone are responsible for your own life. This is why so many people give up their autonomy in exchange for comfort. They trade decision making for the illusion of safety. The greatest decision makers do the opposite. They embrace the burden of choice. Acknowledging Decisions, which is a book written by Thomas Sowell, he discusses how the dissemination, which is pretty much, dissemination means just the action or fact of spreading something, especially information widely, of knowledge influences decision making. So he argues that decentralized decision making, where individuals make choices based on personal knowledge and circumstances, often leads to better outcomes than centralized decisions by distant authorities. This validates Dostoevsky's insight. To go wrong in one's own way is better than to go right in someone else's. The truth about decision making, you will always face costs. Here's the part people refuse to accept. There will always be costs. There will always be problems. Every decision has a price. You are always trading one thing for another. That's why I keep trying to tell you all that there is no such thing as solutions. There's only trade-offs. Always have a trade-off mindset. Not every decision has a benefit, but every decision has a consequence. Problems are inevitable. For the most part, you can't escape problems, and in some situations, you can only decide what problems are worth having. The hidden reality of decision making, people rarely acknowledge this fundamental truth. We live in a world of scarcity. We have infinite desires. Every decision, charitable or selfish, is a trade-off. Nobody talks about it, yet everyone participates in it. Even generosity is a decision made within scarcity. Even selflessness has limits dictated by resources. Even the most altruistic acts require trade-offs. Yet people operate as if resources are unlimited and choices have no cost. That's the illusion. The truth, every human decision, no matter how noble, is shaped by the reality of scarcity. Acknowledge it, master it, or be controlled by it. When you make a decision, ask, why? What am I sacrificing? Every yes is a no to something else. What constraints exist? You are not making choices in a vacuum. Am I thinking for myself, or am I outsourcing my decisions? The best decision makers don't just accept reality. They build better alternatives within it. The most formidable ability in the world, your ability to see reality, clearly makes you formidable. Thomas Sowell once said, and what I mean by formidable, I mean a force to be reckoned with, hard to overcome, because you're just going to be so calculated and so far ahead. You are going to be seeing the unseen. You are not going to be taking things at face value, which over 90% of people in this world do. Thomas Sowell once said, "The problem isn't that Johnny can't read. The problem isn't even that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny doesn't know what thinking is. He confuses it with feeling." A person who sees reality clearly is a threat to all falsehoods. Governments, institutions, and socially accepted narratives depend on deception. The moment you start seeing things as they are, you become a disruptor. And that is why decision making is the most valuable skill in the world, or one of the most valuable skills in the world. If you cannot judge reality properly, then every decision you make is flawed. Every failure you experience is self-inflicted. And you will have nobody to blame but yourself. Most people are completely blind to reality. But you don't have to be. A challenge to you. The next time you make a decision, ask yourself, what constraints am I ignoring? Am I making this decision based on reality or social influence? Because your ability to judge reality correctly will determine your entire future. And those who fail at judgment fail at life. A life without clear judgment is a life dictated by others. If you refuse to sharpen your judgment, you are not making decisions. You are merely following orders. NPCs, non-playable characters. Break free from the matrix. I'm going to keep giving you guys these red pills. You're not going to get no blue pills from this channel. It is a full-time job for me to keep finding the facts, pulling out the truth, and giving it to you. I enjoy it. And I am going to keep doing it, and I'm going to get better at doing it. And you all can bet your asses that on this channel, this platform, my brand, my businesses, my companies, whatever I'm building, whatever that relates to Dante Taviant's cells, it's the truth. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a magnificent day. So speaking of red pills, I just thought that this would probably be a good time to let you guys know, since we were on the top, since I was talking about red pills before the video ended, that the name of that song, after every video that I end, the name of that instrumental is literally called Red Pill. So I thought it would be a really authentic instrumental to put towards my brand, to really enhance my brand even more, enhance what I'm actually trying to educate you guys on and present to you all through all of my videos. The foundation of my brand is truth seeking, wisdom seeking, facts, and from there, human development. And those are the two main things. And I just keep building, building, building from there. That is the foundation. That is my brand. So I I look at an instrumental and it's called Red Pill. For me, all the reason in the world to use it. So with that being said, everything that I do is intentional. Everything, it's intentional, and there is a reason. From the songs, from the music that you hear, from every word that I say, every word that I write, everything, from how I dress, how I look, how I talk, everything is intentional, and it's in an alignment directly towards what I am trying to present, market, educate to you all. It is my brand. Everything. How I live, how I walk, how I act, everything. So I am living in a very, very authentic life. I think that life in a lifestyle, I believe that is how you should go about when you are go about your day in life, period. Regardless if you're an entrepreneur, business owner, whatever. I just think that's how all human beings should be. You should have a vision of where you see yourself and where you want to go. And you need to really practice the self-control of what the behaviors and the patterns will be for you to align towards that vision. And that's all I'm doing. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I don't mess up. I'm not saying I don't get off track, but get back on track. Get focused. Get back focused. Your mind starts thinking about things it shouldn't be thinking. Filter it out. Check yourself. Correct yourself. Be honest. And just keep practicing and wrestling with that consistently, obsessively. How you sleep from the time your foot touches the ground. Monitor yourself. Self control. Getting a little bit off topic, but I just wanted to let you guys know that, or you all know that that's the reason why I play that instrumental with an AI version of myself at the desk, writing 3 to 5 a.m. every morning. That's what I do. That's what I'm about in the divine hours, 3 to 5 a.m. Stressing my creativity, my imagination, tapping into my imagination, letting the spirit overtake me, being delusional and just writing and not so much trying to make a big deal about it or try to put too much thought into it, just letting the energy flow, letting the spirit flow, effortless. And I want to continue to keep doing that until I'm just creating and developing, building effortless, valuable work that people has no other choice but to dive into, but to have in their possessions. So that's all.